signed everything. How is it not valid?
Signing is easy. Knowing what you're signing, that's the real game.
It started on a completely ordinary Tuesday morning around 9:47 a.m. I was standing in our hallway holding my coffee mug when I heard my wife Rachel talking on speakerphone. She wasn't even trying to be quiet. The woman was having a full volume conversation with her mother Patricia about how she was planning to leave me. "Mom, I'm telling you, I'm done with him," Rachel said, casual as anything. "I can't live with a man who thinks sleeping with my boss is such a big deal. Like, seriously, it's 2025, not the Victorian era." I just stood there frozen with my coffee halfway to my mouth. My brain kept trying to process what I was hearing, but it was like hitting an error message over and over. Sleeping with her boss, her rich boss Brandon. When exactly did adultery become a lifestyle choice? Patricia, Rachel's mom, was cackling on the other end. This woman had been divorced 3 times, each husband wealthier than the last, and she wore her alimony payments like medals. "Oh, darling, finally. I've been saying for years you could do better. Someone who understands your ambitions and lifestyle. That poor man still drives a Honda, for heaven's sake." My Honda Accord is a 2019 model with 47,000 miles, fully paid off, gets excellent mileage, and has never once judged me for eating fast food in parking lots at midnight, which is more than I could say for the people currently trashing it. "I know, right?" Rachel laughed. "And he's so predictable. Makes scrambled eggs the same way every Sunday." "The same way, Mom? Who does that?" "People who aren't sociopaths," I wanted to yell. "People who enjoy consistency and not having their spouse cheat on them." But I didn't say anything. I just stood there gripping my mug and listening to my marriage get canceled like a bad TV show. "So what's your plan, sweetheart?" Patricia asked, and I could practically hear her lighting a cigarette. "Already talking to a lawyer," Rachel said proudly. "Stephen Carter. You know, that divorce attorney who handled the Richardson case. He's supposed to be ruthless. Doesn't lose." Great. She was hiring the shark of divorce lawyers. "And Marcus?" Patricia used my name like it was mildly annoying. "How's he taking it?" Rachel sighed dramatically. "Oh, he'll agree to everything. He's too soft." "Honestly, Mom, the man apologizes to furniture when he bumps into it. He won't fight me on this." The worst part? She was absolutely right about that. I walked back to the kitchen, set my mug down carefully, and stared at our wall calendar that still had our anniversary circled in red marker. September 14th, with a heart drawn around it in Rachel's handwriting, back when she pretended to care about things like that. When Rachel finally came to talk to me 20 minutes later, she looked like she was about to film a commercial. Perfect makeup, styled hair, practiced expression of concern. "Marcus, we need to talk." I turned around slowly, coffee mug back in my hand because apparently it had become my emotional support item. "Sure, what's up?" Over the next hour, she laid it all out. The affair had been going on for 6 months. His name was Brandon Cole. He was her boss at Apex Marketing, drove a Tesla Model S, owned a condo downtown, and apparently understood her need for growth and excitement. She wanted a divorce, clean and simple. She'd already talked to Stephen Carter and had papers drawn up. "I think we can handle this maturely," she said, sliding a folder across our kitchen island. "No fighting, no drama, just 2 adults moving forward." I looked at the papers, looked back at her, and smiled. "Okay." She blinked hard. "Okay?" "Yeah," I said, reaching for a pen. "Sure, let's do it." I watched confusion flicker across her face, then relief, then something that almost looked like disappointment. Maybe she wanted a fight to justify whatever story she'd built in her head. But I just signed where she pointed and handed the folder back with the same pleasant expression I use when declining credit cards at checkout. "That's it?" she asked, holding the folder like it might bite her. "That's it," I confirmed, taking another sip of lukewarm coffee. She stood there for another moment, clearly expecting more of a reaction, but when I went back to scrolling my phone, she huffed and walked away, heels clicking on our hardwood floors. Here's what Rachel didn't know and had never bothered to ask about. I'm not just Marcus Webb, mid-level operations manager at a logistics company making $78K a year. That's my cover story, my Clark Kent identity. My real job is as M.W. Webb, founder and CEO of M.W. Consulting Group, LLC, a boutique consulting firm specializing in supply chain optimization and contract negotiation for major corporations. I started the company 7 years ago, a full year before I even met Rachel at that charity mixer. The company is registered under my initials to keep it separate from my personal life. All the paperwork, all the assets, all the considerable income is tied to the LLC, not to me personally. I'd structured it this way with my attorney, Jennifer Park, for liability protection and tax purposes. She'd told me back in 2018 that keeping business separate from personal life was the smartest financial decision I'd ever make. She meant it from a tax perspective. Neither of us predicted it would also become the ultimate divorce defense. Here's where it gets really beautiful. MEW Consulting handles contract negotiations for Sterling Corporation, the massive conglomerate that owns about 17 subsidiary companies. One of those subsidiaries is Apex Marketing, the firm where Rachel worked and where Brandon Cole served as senior vice president, which meant Brandon was essentially my client. He was signing off on invoices that paid me. He was approving contracts. The man sleeping with my wife was unknowingly funding my bank account to the tune of about $180K annually. While Rachel was busy planning her exciting new life, I became a method actor in the role of devoted husband. I smiled at breakfast. I packed her lunches with little notes. I asked about her day. I helped her pick outfits. And secretly, I started documenting everything. I'm a numbers guy. Always have been. So when my wife started cheating, my brain went straight to data collection. I created a spreadsheet called Project Karma and started tracking her schedule, noting when she said she'd be home versus actual arrival times. I tracked mileage on her car. On late work nights, she was averaging an extra 43 miles. Weird, considering her office was only 11 miles from home. Then I found the credit card statements. We had separate accounts, but one joint card for shared expenses. Buried in the March statement between utilities and Target was a charge that made my analyst brain light up. Marriott Downtown, client development, $347. Client development at a hotel, how professional. I pulled up full statement history and found 5 more charges just like it over 3 months, each labeled with business terminology. I cross-referenced her late meetings with Brandon's LinkedIn posts about leadership and innovation, posted at 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, bragging about client dinners while Rachel's GPS showed her at the same downtown Marriott. My spreadsheet evolved into a masterpiece with multiple tabs. Timeline, locations, expenses, frequency analysis. I color-coded by evidence type. Green for suspicious schedule changes, yellow for unusual expenses, red for confirmed hotel visits. That spreadsheet looked like a rainbow, which was either beautiful or disturbing depending on your perspective. I calculated her average betrayal frequency, 2.3 times weekly, created bar graphs showing peak days, Thursdays and Tuesdays, even developed a predictive model based on historical patterns. I was like a meteorologist, except instead of predicting weather, I was predicting adultery. My friend Tony called one evening while I was updating correlation coefficients. Tony works at Sterling and was one of 3 people who knew about my company. Dude, what are you doing? You've been silent for 10 minutes. Statistical analysis, I said, adjusting a formula. Of what? My marriage falling apart. I made a spreadsheet calculating the economic impact of Rachel's affair, including hotel costs, vehicle depreciation, and opportunity cost of her time. Long pause. That's either genius or insane. Why not both? I said, adding another data point. 3 weeks after Rachel's casual divorce announcement, things got even more surreal. She scheduled a formal discussion in our dining room. When I walked in Saturday morning at 10 a.m., I stopped dead. She'd transformed our dining room into a corporate boardroom. Legal pads positioned at each seat, bottles of a fancy French water that costs $4 each, matching pens. And on her laptop, angled toward my seat, was a PowerPoint presentation. A PowerPoint presentation for our divorce. The title slide read, "Moving Forward, a proposal for mutual growth and separation," in elegant font with "Presented by Rachel Webb" underneath. There was a plate of expensive croissants because apparently divorce discussions required continental breakfast service. "Please sit," she said like a restaurant host. She actually dimmed the lights slightly for ambiance and clicked to the first content slide. Slide 1 showed her emotional needs with an actual Venn diagram. 3 circles labeled intellectual stimulation, emotional connection, and shared ambition. A tiny gray overlap in the center labeled current marriage status. The rest was empty, representing all the fulfillment I'd failed to provide. "As you can see," Rachel began with a laser pointer, an actual laser pointer, "our marriage has failed to meet my core requirements. I've spent considerable time in therapy understanding my needs and identifying patterns." "You're in therapy?" I interrupted, genuinely surprised. "Yes, Marcus, I'm in therapy. I've been working on myself. Dr. Chen has helped me recognize I've been settling for a relationship that doesn't challenge me intellectually, or support my professional growth? I nodded and sipped my coffee. Got it. The affair was my fault for not challenging her enough. Slide 2 featured a 2-column comparison. On the left, my priorities: stable employment, paid-off vehicles, home maintenance, predictable routines, safe financial choices. On the right, Rachel's aspirations: professional excellence, strategic networking, luxury lifestyle alignment, dynamic experiences, high-growth investments. You see the disconnect? She said, circling her list with the pointer. You're content with mediocrity. You've never wanted more than average, and I respect that, but I can't live that way. This woman who didn't know I owned a multi-million-dollar consulting firm was lecturing me about settling for mediocrity while literally sleeping with her boss in hotels charged to our joint card. Interesting points, I said neutrally. Please continue. Slide 3 was my favorite. Projected financial redistribution showed a pie chart with her slice noticeably larger, labeled Lydia's portion 60%, while mine was a sad wedge marked Marcus's portion 40%. Now I know California is technically a 50-50 state, she explained. But given that I've been the primary driver of our social connections and have higher earning potential moving forward, I believe 60-40 better reflects our contributions. The subslides broke it down. House equity 60% to Rachel, joint savings 60% to Rachel, half my 401k to Rachel. Vehicles, she keeps the Audi, I keep the Honda. Plus, I'd pay all filing fees and legal costs. I think you'll find this more than fair, she concluded, clicking to a final slide that just said questions over a stock photo of 2 people shaking hands against a sunset. I sat back and tapped the fancy pen against the legal pad. The silence stretched out, and I could see her confidence wavering slightly. That was incredibly thorough, I said finally. Really impressive work. She brightened immediately. I wanted us to approach this professionally. No drama, just 2 adults making rational decisions. Absolutely. I pulled the legal pad toward me and started writing. So just to confirm, you want 60% of the house, 60% of savings, half my 401k, you keep your car, I keep mine, and I pay all fees? Yes, she said, sitting down with the satisfied expression of someone who thinks they just won Monopoly. Plus, covering legal costs is reasonable, given this is mutual. So I pay for the privilege of getting divorced after you cheated? I said it without emotion, just facts. Marcus, we've moved past blame. This is about moving forward constructively. I finished writing, signed with a flourish, and slid it to her. You know what? You're absolutely right. Growth requires difficult choices. Sometimes you have to let go of things not serving you anymore. I stood up, grabbed a croissant for the road, and headed to the kitchen. Wait, Rachel called after me, staring at the paper. That's it? You're agreeing? Just like that? I turned back and smiled genuinely. Of course. You clearly know what you want. You've done the research and made your presentation. Who am I to stand in the way of your self-actualization? The confusion on her face was beautiful. She'd prepared for negotiation, maybe a fight, not immediate agreement. What Rachel didn't understand was that the paper I'd signed was meaningless theater. The real legal documents were already filed with the court by Jennifer, showing that every asset Rachel thought she was dividing didn't belong to us at all. A week later, Rachel insisted I attend her company's annual gala at the Meridian Hotel. $200 a plate, white tablecloths, centerpieces costing more than groceries, lighting that made everyone look either sophisticated or jaundiced. Rachel looked genuinely beautiful in her designer dress, which made the whole situation feel like Greek tragedy with dark comedy. We arrived fashionably late, and she was immediately swept into air kisses and hollow compliments. A woman in a silver dress descended on us. Rachel, you look stunning, and this must be your husband. Marcus, I said, extending my hand with a forgettable smile. Nice to meet you. Sarah Phillips, VP of Client Relations. What do you do, Marcus? Operations management, I said. Technically true the same way saying I dabble in finance is true for the CEO of Goldman Sachs. Pretty boring stuff, logistics and supply chain? Her eyes glazed over immediately. Perfect. She excused herself within 30 seconds to find someone more interesting. Then I saw him. Brandon Cole, Senior Vice President, mid-40s, hairstyled with enough product to survive a hurricane, wearing a suit without price tags. He had that confidence that comes from never hearing no and having a trust fund backup plan. He spotted Rachel and his face lit up inappropriately. He made his way over with the swagger of someone who thought he was winning. Rachel, he said, saying her name too warmly. You look absolutely incredible tonight. Brandon, she replied with breathiness that definitely wasn't there when talking to me. Thank you. Have you met my husband, Marcus? Brandon turned like he just noticed furniture. He extended his hand with a trying too hard alpha grip. Brandon Cole, great to finally meet you. Rachel talks about you all the time. Does she? I said pleasantly, shaking with exactly average pressure. That's sweet. She mentions you too. Sounds like you work well together. Something flickered across his face. We make a good team. She really drives results. I'll bet she drives something, I thought, but said, That's great. She definitely puts in the hours. The dedication is impressive, Brandon agreed, exchanging a too-long look with Rachel. That's what it takes to succeed in this industry. Going the extra mile? Oh, absolutely, I said, raising my wine glass. To great partnerships, I said it, looking directly at Brandon, watching for irony to land. It didn't. The man was too self-absorbed, but Rachel caught it. I saw her hand tighten around her champagne flute, saw her eyes widen slightly, saw her smile freeze. Especially ones with no non-compete clauses, I added cheerfully, because I apparently couldn't help myself. Brandon laughed, missing everything. You've got that right. Non-competes are nightmares. We had to restructure half our contracts last year. Sounds complicated, I said. What I didn't say was that I'd reviewed those restructured contracts and signed off on the compliance reports. Dinner was served at round tables seating 10. Through what I assume was Rachel's careful planning, Brandon sat at our table along with other executives. He held court, telling stories about client meetings with enthusiasm that suggested he thought he was fascinating. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted to Rachel, and she'd smile back with that special smile she used to give me when we were dating. Richard Chen, the CFO sitting beside me, seemed genuinely nice. Rachel mentioned you work in operations. What company? Sterling Corporation, I said, using my cover story that was technically true. I work with them. No kidding, Richard perked up. We're owned by Sterling. Small world. Isn't it, though? I agreed, taking a bite of overpriced chicken that tasted like disappointment. The evening dragged with mandatory fun. Speeches from executives thanking teams for dedication. Brandon gave one about driving innovation through collaborative excellence, which was either meaningless jargon or code depending on your cynicism. I applauded at appropriate moments, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, and played supportive, boring husband with dedication, knowing this performance had an expiration date. Behind the scenes, the real show was being prepared. Jennifer had been busy filing actual paperwork. She submitted corporate ownership documents to the court, filed the response to Rachel's divorce petition outlining in legal detail why every asset Rachel thought she was entitled to actually belonged to MW Consulting Group, LLC. She attached 7 years of documentation, tax returns, corporate filings, and enough evidence to make any judge understand this wasn't last-minute asset hiding. And Stephen Carter, for all his expensive suits and aggressive reputation, still hadn't connected the dots. He was reviewing documentation, trying to find loopholes, assuming this was a normal divorce case. He had no idea the mid-level employee he planned to steamroll actually owned the consulting firm his client's company paid 6 figures annually. The irony was so thick you could serve it at these overpriced dinners. As the evening ended, Rachel leaned over and whispered, "Thank you for being so good tonight. I know this wasn't easy." I looked at her, really looked, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret, just calm certainty of someone who'd already moved on emotionally and was waiting for paperwork to catch up. It was fine, I said. Actually kind of fun in its own way. Then came Thursday morning, 9:23 a.m. exactly, while I was making coffee and Rachel was upstairs getting ready. Her phone rang on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up. Mr. Carter. I felt anticipation flutter in my chest like watching a season finale. "Hang on, I'll get it," Rachel called, rushing downstairs. She grabbed the phone with her professional smile. "Mr. Carter, good morning." Then her voice changed. "I'm sorry, what?" The professional smile vanished. I risked a glance and watched her freeze. Phone pressed to ear, other hand gripping the counter. "What do you mean he owns everything through an LLC?" Her voice went up an octave. "He's just a mid-level employee. He works in operations. He drives a Honda." The Honda. She kept coming back to the Honda like it was courtroom evidence. Carter's voice was muffled, but I could hear panic, that special lawyer panic when they've massively underestimated their opponent. "But I signed," Rachel's voice cracked. "I signed what documents? When did I—" She was remembering signing the lease agreement when we first moved in. The one where MW Consulting Group's name was right there at the top in bold letters. The one she'd barely glanced at. He's the registered owner of our company's consulting firm? Rachel's voice got louder, approaching hysteria. Every asset I listed belongs to that entity. That can't be. I would have known. She turned toward me. Our eyes met across the kitchen. I was caught mid-pour, totally, definitely not listening. She stared like I'd revealed I was secretly a spy. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I'll call you back, she whispered into the phone, hanging up without waiting for response. The silence stretched like taffy. I took a sip of coffee. Perfect temperature. What the heck is MW Consulting Group? She finally asked, voice shaking. My company, I said simply. Consulting firm, supply chain optimization, contract negotiations. Been running it for 7 years now. Pretty successful, actually. Your company, she repeated slowly, like translating a foreign language. You have a company? Started it before we met. Been doing really well. It's grown significantly over the years. And the house? Company property. We rent from the LLC. You signed the lease when we moved in. It's filed with the county. The cars? Company vehicles. Tax deductible. Very efficient from an accounting standpoint. The investment accounts. Business assets. Properly documented, filed, reported to IRS every year. Samantha, that's my lawyer you haven't met. She's very thorough about these things. Rachel's face cycled through colors like a malfunctioning mood ring. White to red to purple and back. You lied to me, she said, voice between whisper and scream. I never lied, I corrected gently. I just didn't mention it. You never asked. You assumed I was just Marcus from operations, and I let you assume that. There's a difference. That's deceptive? Is it? I asked, genuinely curious. More or less deceptive than sleeping with your boss for 6 months, then trying to divorce me while taking half what you thought were my assets? She opened her mouth, closed it again. Even she could see how the math worked. Brandon, she said, suddenly, face going pale. Brandon signs. Oh my God. Derek approves your invoices? Well, not directly, I said, because accuracy matters. They go through several approval levels, but yes, technically. Reports I generate for Sterling eventually cross his desk. He's senior VP, so he signs off on subsidiary vendor relationships. Quite the coincidence when you think about it. Coincidence? She echoed, then laughed. Not a happy laugh. The laugh of someone who realized they'd been playing checkers while their opponent set up a chessboard. You planned this. You planned all of this. I plan to protect my assets through proper corporate structure, which any financial advisor recommends. The timing of everything else, that was all you. You cheated. You decided on divorce. You hired an aggressive lawyer and made a PowerPoint with pie charts about taking my stuff. I just had good paperwork. She sank into a kitchen chair like her legs stopped working. Carter said I don't get anything. The house, cars, accounts, none of it counts as marital property. Technically correct, I confirmed. The best kind of correct. But I signed the lease, she said to herself. Why didn't I read it? She looked up with tears forming. How could you do this to me? And that's when I felt it. Not sympathy. I'd used that up over 6 months of being cheated on and gaslighted. But maybe disappointment that it came to this. How could I do this? I repeated, setting my mug in the sink carefully. Rachel, I didn't do anything to you. I built a business. I protected my assets. I followed the law. You're the one who decided our marriage wasn't worth staying faithful to. You're the one who planned this divorce thinking you'd walk away with half of everything. You're the one who made PowerPoint slides about my lack of vision. I walked toward the hallway, then paused. She was still sitting there looking like someone just told her Santa wasn't real and also he was filing a lawsuit. For what it's worth, I said, I really did love you back when we started. I thought we were building something together. But you looked at me and saw a stepping stone. Someone boring you could upgrade from when something shinier came along. So yeah, I kept my business separate and my assets protected. Not because I planned for this, but because I'm not stupid. I left her in the kitchen surrounded by ruins of her carefully constructed plan and went back to my office. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Carter just called me. He sounds like he's having a breakdown. This is the best Thursday ever. I typed back. Just watched Rachel get the news. Definitely top 10 life moments. Top 10, not top 5. Let's see how the rest plays out. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and got back to work. Because even when your marriage is imploding, quarterly reports still need reviewing. Plus, Brandon's compliance documents had just come through needing my approval. The irony was still delicious. If Karma had a playlist, the next 48 hours would have been set to the most satisfying soundtrack ever. Carter called me the next day. and the man sounded like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Gone was the smooth confidence. In its place was someone who'd realized they walked into court wearing clown shoes. "Mr. Webb," he said with papers shuffling frantically in the background, "I need to discuss the corporate documentation with you. There are some irregularities I'd like to clarify." "Irregularities?" I asked innocently. "Everything's filed properly, tax returns going back 7 years, asset purchases all documented. I'm very thorough." "Yes, I can see that," he said, words seeming to physically hurt him. "My client was unaware of the extent of your business holdings." "My client," I noticed, "not your wife anymore," already distancing himself from the train wreck. "Well, she never asked," I said cheerfully. "Communication is important in marriage, don't you think?" He cleared his throat, which I'm pretty sure was lawyer speak for, "I hate you so much right now." "We'll need to reassess our position." "You do that," I said. "Take all the time you need." Within a week, the affair went nuclear. Brandon's wife found out. And yes, Brandon was married, because of course he was. Mrs. Cole wasn't just any scorned wife, though. She was on the board of directors at Apex Marketing, the same board that took a very dim view of senior executives having affairs with subordinates, especially when said affairs created liability issues. Brandon got fired. Not laid off, not pursuing other opportunities, but fired. Escorted out by security with his box of belongings, Tesla privileges revoked. Professional reputation in tatters. Rachel got fired the same day for ethical violations and company policy breaches. They didn't even let her finish the week. I found out through Tony, who heard it through Sterling's corporate Slack, that apparently extended through every subsidiary, like the world's most efficient gossip network. "Dude," he texted, "Brandon and your wife just got canned. It's all over company channels. People are making popcorn emoji chains." I sat back in my chair and smiled at the ceiling. I hadn't caused this. I hadn't called Brandon's wife or reported anything to HR. I just existed and documented things properly and let dominoes fall where they naturally fell. That night, my phone rang. Rachel. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "How could you do this to me?" she sobbed. "I lost my job, Marcus. I lost everything." "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "I just filed accurate paperwork. You should try it sometime." I hung up. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. 3 months later, I was sitting in a downtown cafe with Jennifer, drinking overpriced lattes and laughing about the whole saga like it was a Netflix series we'd both binged. "I still can't believe she made a PowerPoint," Jennifer said, shaking her head. "With pie charts? Who does that?" "Someone who thought they were the smartest person in the room," I said. Turns out the room had better data. Rachel had moved back in with Patricia, which felt like poetic justice of the highest order. 2 divorced women complaining about men while living off alimony. Brandon had relocated to Florida to start fresh, which was code for running from embarrassment, hoping nobody Googles him. Me? I bought a new condo downtown, 32nd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the whole city. On paper, it was owned by MW Consulting Group, because I'd learned my lesson about mixing business and personal assets. "So, what's next for you?" Jennifer asked. "Dating, traveling, becoming a full-time petty revenge consultant?" I laughed. "Honestly, just focusing on work, hanging with Tony, maybe taking up a hobby that isn't documenting infidelity in spreadsheets." My phone buzzed. Email notification from Rachel. Subject line, "We should talk." The message was 3 paragraphs trying to explain how she'd made mistakes, been confused, maybe we could work things out, how she understood now that I was more than she'd given me credit for. I showed Jennifer the phone. "Are you going to respond?" I closed the email, moved it to spam, created a filter. All future emails from Rachel Webb automatically go to trash. "Nope," I said, putting my phone away. "I'm good." Jennifer raised her latte. "To properly documented revenge," I clinked my cup against hers. "And tax-deductible karma." Funny thing about revenge. People say it's best served cold, but honestly, it's much better served legally documented, tax-deductible, and with a side of irony. The woman left me because I was too boring and drove a Honda. Turns out boring people who read the fine print and file proper paperwork are exactly the kind you don't want to betray. TLDR, wife cheated with her boss for 6 months, hired expensive lawyer, made PowerPoint presentation dividing our assets 60-40 in her favor. She didn't know I owned a multi-million-dollar consulting company that her boss's parent company paid $180K annually. Everything she thought we owned actually belonged to my LLC established before marriage. Both got fired when affair became public. She got nothing in divorce, moved back with her mom. I kept everything and bought a penthouse. Sometimes the boring guy wins. Edit. This really blew up. Some answers to common questions. Yes, the PowerPoint was 100% real. She had a laser pointer, French water bottles, croissants, the works. I still have screenshots. The spreadsheet with 2.3 weekly affair frequency and predictive models? Yeah, that happened too. Was it excessive? Probably. Did it keep me sane? Absolutely. Process grief your own way. My Honda Accord is still running perfectly. Just hit 52,000 miles. Best decision I ever made was paying it off early. For everyone asking about legal advice, talk to an actual attorney like I did. Jennifer Park structured everything properly from day one. Asset protection isn't about hiding money. It's about smart business structure, keeping personal and professional separate. The fact that Brandon was signing invoices approving payments to my company while sleeping with my wife is still the most ironic thing that's ever happened to me. Universe has a sense of humor. No, I'm not worried about Rachel finding this. She doesn't use Reddit, and honestly, what's she going to do at this point? To the people saying I should have told her about the company, why? We had separate finances. She never asked what I did beyond my cover job. She assumed I was boring mid-level management, and I let her assume that. Not lying, just not volunteering information she didn't request. The boring, predictable guy who makes eggs the same way every Sunday and drives a practical car turned out to be running a 7-figure consulting firm. Life's funny that way. Thanks for all the support. Life's genuinely good now. Working on expanding the business, spending time with real friends, and enjoying my penthouse view. Sometimes being underestimated is the best advantage you can have.